Tech Sounds presents EduTrends.
Welcome to EduTrends presented by the Institute for the Future of Education. This is a Tech Sound podcast, the official podcast of Tecnológico de Monterrey. I am José Pepe Escamilla, Associate Director of the Institute for the Future of Education. Today's guest is Chris Dede, Senior Research Fellow at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. It's a pleasure to have you here, Chris.
Well, I'm delighted by the opportunity to share ideas, and the work of your institute is very important, so I'm delighted to be able to contribute.
Thanks, Chris. It's great. I would like to start with a sort of personal question about your dedication to dedicating to career to transforming education. What inspired you to focus on this field?
Well, I know this is going to sound a little odd, but I hated being a student. Hated it. I mean, high school was the most unhappy years of my entire life. I went to a not very good public high school. The first couple weeks, I could read the textbook in the back of the class, and after that, it was just week after week after week of boredom. And I went into education because I didn't want other people to suffer the way that I had. And so I've always been interested in educational transformation and in helping a broad range of students to find learning powerful and interesting instead of just something that they have to do.
Very interesting. So you wanted to change it, transform education so that other people don't feel like you did.
Exactly. So that people feel excited and empowered and confident and happy to be in a learning situation.
Yes. So we will focus most of this discussion on your new book, on the new book, 60-year curriculum. But as you are also well recognized in technology, I will have to ask you a couple of questions around that. So one is a very general question. A couple of years ago, the OECD launched a report, Digital Education Outlook, that many people interpreted like, finally, educational technology is not that important or decisive in terms of learning efficacy. What's your interpretation of this? What can you tell us?
Well, I think that the part of the report was right and part of the report was off target. So I would agree that most of the time when educational technology has been used over the last generation, it's been used poorly. And as a result, it's accomplished less than one could have accomplished by taking the same resources and putting them into something else that we know is powerful for education. And it's very frustrating to those of us who believe in the power of educational technology to have to say that device after device, software after software, medium after medium, people make the same mistakes over and over and over again that undercut the power of the technology. That said, that doesn't mean that the power isn't there. The report reminded me a little bit of a report, sort of a fictitious report on antibiotics, where the report would say, well, antibiotics don't do much of anything because we've tried taking the whole bottle at once and it didn't work. And we've tried grinding up the antibiotics and smearing them all over our bodies and it didn't work. And we've tried worshiping the bottle of antibiotics and that didn't work. So it's clear that all this hype about antibiotics doesn't make any sense. Well, of course, antibiotics aren't going to work if you don't take them as intended by spreading them out over a period of time at an appropriate dosage. And the same thing is true of the learning technologies. So that's the part of the report that I had more problems with.
Yes, I agree with you that many times people think that technology is some kind of silver bullet or something like that. No, it's magic, and it cannot be taken out of context. No, what the context of the institution, the educational model, the access that the students have, their previous knowledge or competencies that they have, professors, training, etc. So there are many things around that can go wrong that will make technology not work. And most of the time, people think, well, I do this. It's like I take a pill, taking your analysis, and I'll be cured. No, so it's not like that. There's many things that you have to do in order that this work. It's more a systemic approach.
But when it does work, then it can accomplish things in learning that cannot be accomplished without technology. I co-host a podcast as well. It's called Silver Lining for Learning. We started it the first week of the pandemic, 4 of us who knew a lot about online learning. And we were sad because the pandemic is a terrible human tragedy. We were happy because it would now finally people would have to do online learning and see the potential power. But we were sad because we knew that they weren't prepared to do online learning, and they would do it badly, and they would blame the technology. And it's interesting in education that we always lag behind the other parts of society in terms of technology, because since the pandemic, almost every aspect of life is hybrid now. Business is hybrid, and many kinds of other organizations or experiences are hybrid. But schools have raced to go back to the old model of locking kids into classrooms and doing everything face to face. So once again, the technology isn't being given credit for what it can do.
Exactly. Yes, you're right. So now I will go to the 60-year curriculum. Now, this concept that is elaborated in a book that you edited. And here you propose a shift on how we think of learning or education in the lifetime of a person. Can you tell us what are the core ideas behind this concept?
Sure. The book begins by talking about 2 things. One of them is that people's lifetimes are getting longer, and that they may well end up spending 60 years in preparing for work and then working so that they don't run out of money later in their life when they retire. I myself actually have fall into this category of 60 years or more spent in the work environment. But the second part of the book, in the introduction, is about what's coming in the world. And the book says that we're facing a very disruptive and dangerous and chaotic time. And it discusses the fact that in early 2020, none of the UN 20 sustainability goals were being met. There was a lot of problems with climate change. There were disruptive technologies emerging in AI and biotechnology and other areas. And so people would be facing decades of disruption and chaos, and they needed lifelong learning, because whatever they learned to do well in the present wouldn't be very effective 3 or 4 years later. Now, unfortunately, that forecast was incredibly accurate, because the book was written before COVID, before Gen AI, and before the recent shift in world leadership that's led to a lot of problems. And so, unfortunately, we were very, very accurate about the challenge that we need lifelong learning to overcome. And given the nature of the challenge, the book then said that this lifelong learning can't be just cognitive, even though most of what our academic institutions focus on is knowledge and cognitive skills. It has to be interpersonal, and we see that now even more than when the book was written, because in a world that's now hybrid because of the pandemic, you not only have to be good at working with someone sitting across the table from you, you have to be good at working with someone half the globe away that you may never meet face-to-face. And then intrapersonal, that if you're facing chaos, you have to be able to thrive on chaos. You have to be resilient. You have to be tenacious. You have to enjoy being challenged and feel confident in your own abilities. So your beliefs and your dispositions are really important. And again, that's an area of education that's underemphasized. So essentially what we were saying is the challenge for lifelong learning is much bigger than people think it is. And the range of knowledge and skills and beliefs and dispositions and abilities that people need are much broader than people think they are. And that's why we need a different model for lifelong learning.
Right. It makes a lot of sense, and as you said, things have accelerated. No, so and we got to go into the part of technology. No, so you wrote the book around 5 years ago with the changes on this technology, particularly AI. I would say, what role they play in this idea of the 60-year curriculum? Is that something that can help accelerate the 6-year curriculum, or make it more challenging?
Yeah, the book was really based on the idea that technology can be very helpful to us in accelerating this process. And about a year after I wrote the book, I became associate director of the National Artificial Intelligence Institute on Adult Learning and Online Education, abbreviated AI-ALO. So the U.S. has 27 national AI institutes, and most of them are targeted to different sectors of society. So there's 5 institutes on agriculture, for example. There's 5 institutes on healthcare, and there's 5 institutes on education. The one I'm involved with is the only one that's higher education and adults, upskilling and reskilling. So it really matches, the population that you in your work and your institute serve. And the institute was started before Gen AI, and then we had to kind of rethink everything when Gen AI came along because it opened up a whole different set of capabilities. So it was sort of a classic example of exactly what the 60-year curriculum was about. That even as soon as a year after a proposal was written, the plan in the proposal had to be redone because of the turbulence in the world.
Mhm. And, and do universities have a role to play in this 6-year curriculum? Because traditional universities give a lot of weight to the 4-degree education, let's say, and non-degree education like continuing education, executive education, etc. It's a sort of a second-class citizen, no, in universities. They look at a different way. So, do you think that universities have any role to play in this 6-year curriculum? And if so, what changes do we need to do in the way that universities are organized so that they're relevant in lifelong learning?
Well, I hope that universities will find a way to play a role, because if they don't, and people understand that actually what you don't need an education. What you need is empowerment in terms of how to learn in a self-directed way throughout your entire life. If people shift in what they're looking for from, oh, I'm looking for a degree because the job description says I have to have a degree, to instead saying, I'm looking for a way that over 6 decades, without constantly going back to school and getting another degree, I can keep up, I can evolve myself, I can lead and be effective in shaping the world. Well, then universities' missions look pretty badly off target, selling education and degrees. So hopefully what universities will do is to reimagine themselves, where they say, we're not in the education business. we're not in the classroom business or the degree business. We're in the learning business. And we're not in just the learning while you're on campus business. We're in the lifelong learning business. And if they do that, then yes, the classic degree can fit underneath that umbrella, but they need to start with a broader umbrella and to work from there. Before the broadcast started, you and I were talking about people at Georgia Tech who we both know, who after 33 years of the university not making changes, it started a new school of lifetime learning. That's one kind of a stepping stone towards moving into this reconfiguration of universities. The kind of institute that you are involved with is another way of accomplishing this. And I wouldn't say that the AI Institute is a way of doing it. It's more narrow than that, but at least the AI Institute is building the kinds of tools and technologies that could be useful in this evolution.
So I agree with you what you have said, and I have to say that I sometimes myself I am a little bit disappointed that change is not happening faster. No, so we have some examples that you gave some examples of change, but I believe that we need something that will make change happen faster. And also maybe the COVID crisis was a way to make people look at technology as a way for learning and find out that it was possible and it stayed there. So, for instance, even if we have done live learning in the past, online learning in the past in Tec de Monterrey for many years, in our continuing education offer, we still had prevalent face-to-face model for continuing education. After the COVID, we shifted the other way around. So the online model is the prevalent model now in our continuing education, executive education in Tec de Monterrey that is part of a lifelong learning offer. So what can we do to make these changes? So what maybe educational leaders are trying to make those changes, but it's not easy to move a university because you know that all the group decisions that we have, the Senate, the departments, etc., make changes difficult. No, so what can we recommend to educational leaders or maybe policymakers to sort of create a ecosystem or incentives or whatever to make a change that universities transform into 60-year curriculum institutions?
Well, I agree that universities are hard to change. Someone once said that it's harder to change a university than to move a cemetery, even though the two involve similar skills. And in the same way, I think that what's going to change universities is disruptive innovation. My colleague Clay Christensen in the Harvard School of Business would talk about disruption, where you find a small population that isn't well served. You build something that steadily becomes more and more and more powerful, and eventually it disrupts the institution that it's was originally intended to address. And that business model of disruption only partially transfers to education, but the part of education that transfers to well is higher education. And the disruption, I think, is performance assessments, which Gen AI has done a lot to enable. So let's say that you're looking to hire a manager who's good at negotiating, because that's the role that you want them to play. You want them to be their top negotiator. And so you can look at an elite university's business school, and you can say, oh, here's somebody who took 5 courses in negotiation and has a letter from a professor who says that they did really well in those courses. So I guess I'll hire them. Well, as we know to our sorrow, that doesn't mean that somebody knows anything about negotiation. It just means that you know how to pass tests about negotiation or how to describe the top 5 stages of negotiation. But being a negotiator is a verb. It's not a noun. And so what we can do now, in part because of Gen AI and in part because of advances in immersive learning, XR technologies, another specialty of mine, is we can create like a negotiation gauntlet where we say, well, we've developed these 12 negotiations and each one has several chatbots in it. And if you can win the negotiation with the landlord and with the used car dealer and with your boss when you want a promotion and these other 5 negotiations. If you can successfully do those, we'll hire you. And we don't care how many negotiation courses you've took. And that's the power of what people are calling micro-credentials. That if you have performance-based micro-credentials, instead of a transcript, you're going to be the one that gets hired. And that's the disruptive innovation that as these people recognize the opportunity to develop these kinds of performance assessments that can be validated, that can be rigorous, that can be authentic, because now you can converse in the same way that you would with a human being. That really opens up a challenge to universities that will be difficult for them to meet unless they're also willing to transform their assessments and their model. So when I think about disruption, that's one of the areas that I'm working in to try to make a difference.
It's very interesting what you said, because I believe that micro credentials, if they are well done, they can serve as a stepping stone or sort of Trojan horse to start this change that you quote Christensen inside the university. So starting maybe on continuing education. If you have competency-based micro-credentials where you really develop the program based on what the society, industry, business needs, and then you evaluate that by a portfolio of evidence that the person can perform those competencies, then that micro-credential becomes relevant, in the labor market. But also, if you do it eventually in the curriculum of the 4-degree education, as we have done, for instance, in Tec de Monterrey, our educational model of Tec de Monterrey is competency-based and it's also challenge-based. So students spend around 50% of the time solving challenges from with them. We call them educational partners, which are like clients now from society, industry, business, government. So the students have a challenge that has been designed by this educational partner, and at least faculty from 2 different departments, because reality is not divided in silos. So the students have to show that they have developed these disciplinary skills and non-disciplinary skills. These challenges have learning modules attached so that they have the knowledge that they need for just-in-time learning, and they are evaluated in the courses on the learning modules. But what is very important for the skills is the portfolio of evidence at the end of the challenge. And we decided to focus more on the horizontal skills, the what I call power skills, soft skills, but I like to call them power skills because they are so important. More than on the disciplinary. We also evaluate the disciplinary ones, but because evaluating those disciplinary curriculum, non-disciplinary skills in a traditional classroom setting, as you said, is very difficult. So you can approve 5 courses of negotiation, but maybe you're not a good negotiator. So you really have to be performing the task, somehow to be able to show that.
Well, I really like the model you're describing, and I think that's exactly right in terms of where institutions should be going. Um, you look at something like medical education, where people spend 4 years in very traditional kind of having their heads stuffed with knowledge, and then they go out for an internship at a residency where they learn on the ground all these performances that are actually the heart of what medicine is about. And what we have the capability to do now, and I wouldn't have said this even 2 years ago, is we have the capability to make the first 4 years of medical school like the last 2 years, the internship and the residency, but without risking real patients, by doing these kinds of performances, challenges, simulations, in ways that richly document what they're learning, how they're learning, what they need to get better, and so on. And I think that as demonstrations like that, like what you're doing, spring up, and the students who come out are far more successful than students who've gone through traditional education. That's going to be the disruptor that starts to force higher education to shift.
Yes. Yes, I agree with you. And it's also another challenge is the time of response. So uh, traditional education is usually slow to respond to the changing needs of society, market, business, etc. No, so in countries like in Latin America, sometimes it can take 3 to 4 years to change the curriculum. No, because of the way it works with the regulations. So you decide to change it. Uh, you spend maybe a year and a half developing the curriculum, and then a year or 2 years to get the approval for the government. So when the student enters, the curriculum is already 3 years old, and when they leave after 4 years, maybe 7 years old. No, so the first generation. So I don't know if it happens in all parts of the world, but what do you think on this responsiveness of the curriculum? What can we do to be more responsive?
Well, I think that um, student centered is really the key here, because what we see in higher education now is that it's really discipline centered or field centered. There's this body of cognitive knowledge and skills that people are supposed to have when they leave, just just in case later in life they're going to need it. And instead, what we need is to center education around a student's purpose. Maybe they need engineering, but their purpose is to go help marginalized populations in global South countries. That purpose is broader than just taking every engineering course that you can. It involves taking other kinds of learning experiences that prepare you with the power skills. Here in the US, they're now starting to be called durable skills, and the beliefs and the dispositions that they need to accomplish that purpose. One of the groups that I've been impressed by is a group called the Post-Secondary Teaching with Technology Collaborative. This is a coalition that was funded by the U.S. Department of Education 4 years ago. I was asked to be an advisor for them. And they've developed a variety of strategies so that a 4-year institution can help develop students as self-directed learners who don't have to go back for a degree the minute that they want to learn something else, because they've learned some of these other kinds of skills and beliefs and dispositions. And I think that's a really important thing that happens when you have a challenge-based, student-centered curriculum, but it doesn't happen when you have a discipline-centered, uh, assimilation-based curriculum.
Mhm, mhm. So, well, thank you for your answer, Chris. We are arriving at the end of our podcast. I would like to ask you a last question. We talk a lot about uh, lifelong learning in universities, but I understand that lifelong learning is more than that. No, it doesn't have to happen in a university. So I would like for you to look at the future and what would you like to tell us, or do you think that the things that you would like to happen in the following 5-10 years in higher education and lifelong learning in general?
Well, I think that you're right, that it's continuing education that is really where the future of higher education is. And especially the branch of continuing education that has concepts underlying it, like the 60-year curriculum, or like the lifetime learning group at Georgia Tech, or like your institute and the work that it's doing on the future of higher education. And I think that there will be pressure that's unprecedented in history for higher education institutions to take these kinds of changes seriously. For all the reasons we talked about in the 60-year curriculum book, failure to meet the UN sustainability goals, climate change, disruptive technologies, but also the new pressures that have emerged since then, disruption like Gen AI and advances in XR, disruption of globalization and political turbulence that's taking place. And so my hope is that at least some universities will become exemplars that other people can follow, lighthouses that other people can turn to when they see the storm coming and they realize that they have to have a different vision if they're going to survive. And I've been an optimist all my life. Sometimes, as opposed to my own experiences, as we talked about, a lot of technology is consistently misused. But I continue to be optimistic that the time is coming when we will achieve this transformation. And I find work like we're doing very exciting every day.
I agree with you. So I hope we can see those changes and we can find ways of collaborating, sharing, and making those changes more systemic. Thank you, Chris, for your time and your insights on lifelong learning and the future of education. I really enjoy our conversation, and I hope that we will see you in the future, can talk in the future.
Thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to opportunities to collaborate. Thank you.
For more information, visit observatory.tech.mx/EduTrends podcast and ife.tech.mx. A special thanks to Tecnológico de Monterrey, the Institute for the Future of Education, and the Tech Sounds team. EduTrends producers Esteban Venegas and Cristian Igosa. Stay tuned and play Tech Sounds in your favorite podcast app for other great shows and content.